It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Thanks for joining us. I'll be your host this morning. Glad to see all you folks out there this morning. I see folks out there in Sioux Falls and Buxton. I think that's Maine. Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry if I insulted you, Buxton. See Fort Wayne and Muncie. I believe that's all Indiana area. I think I mentioned Town and Country, Huntington, and some other folks are out all over the country. Glad to have you guys on board with us this morning. Pleasure to see you out there. You know, we're facing a time of radical change in our nation. And I see a trend where more and more folk are coming awake all the time. The challenge, the problem, of course, is that it may be too few, too late. And the problem, of course, is that we have this. And I don't, you know, you've heard the term that's been coined, the vast right-wing conspiracy. I got to tell you, folks, this is the vast left-wing conspiracy, the globalization conspiracy, the enslavement of America conspiracy, the end of freedom and liberty as we know it conspiracy. The 14th Amendment is the betrayal of America conspiracy. It's happening to us every day, and it's all around us. I don't understand who cannot see it or why they can't see it. We're going to wrap on 4 different issues this morning. The first is that the EPA has now become nothing more than a domestic terrorist cloaked as an agency of the federal government. They are a domestic terrorist organization. And no one should make any mistake about who they are and their goals. Their goal is power for power's sake. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about individual rights. They don't care about anything other than the expansion and growth of their agency at your expense and cost. And they have become a domestic terrorist. I can't say it any plainer, folks. I mean, aren't you tired of hearing these happy little phrases from your mainstream media Ministry of Propaganda folks that you listen to all the time? Aren't you tired of hearing how they pay them deference as if these scumbags have any right to deference? They're actively seeking your demise. And yet the media approaches them as if they're entitled to respect, admiration. I have no respect for any of them. Not a single one. Fire them all. Every last one. Without exception, they all need to be eliminated. Dishonorably discharged. Congress, every agency employee, everything frozen and on hold until we get this country back in some semblance of an order. That's it. There is no other alternative for us. The alternative is to allow this continued slide into authoritarianism, where you do what you're told or else. I know that people say, well, you know, what can I do against the EPA? They're a mammoth. That should tell you everything you need to know. Anytime you feel powerless in the face of government's onslaught, the truth is right in front of you. That is the spoken truth. Our second topic, Harris Corporation. This is the company that has created StingRay. Now, Harris Corporation is a multinational conglomerate megalith. And I am calling for the destruction of Harris Corporation. Flat out, end it. I don't care what it takes. I know that we cannot boycott them because they don't make a lot of consumer products. But your state buys from them. Your police departments buy from them. Your state, or not militia, but your state National Guard buys from them. The federal government buys from them. And we need to eliminate them because they have betrayed us by selling StingRay to local police departments. Every citizen should be contacting your local police department and demanding the exposure of whether or not they own a StingRay. And if they do, it should be immediately returned. And if they say it's secret because they have a non-disclosure with Harris, then you need to file a lawsuit against them and immediately get an emergency injunction to force them to remove it from their possession. Give it back to Harris, sell it to some other third world country, but get it out of here. Harris needs to be destroyed. Why? Why do I sound so frustrated with Harris? Well, because they've manufactured a tool that allows tyranny to reign. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. Harris Corporation is the creator of the StingRay device. They're based in Melbourne, Florida. You can go visit their website at harris.com. They demand a non-disclosure agreement in place before the police department can have it, so that they can't disclose they're using it. So it's time for a peaceful civilian uprising. Harris Corporation must be destroyed. Find any dirt on the company. Find anybody who's a whistleblower within it. Find anybody who's an employee that will spill. Find any way that you can get the edge of your blade under the armor. And do them in. Find any contract they have and do whatever damage you can do within the boundaries of the law. And let's make a concerted effort to destroy the company that wants to destroy America. How's that? If it serves no public use and it's aiding and abetting the enemy, then it's time for we the people to take it out of play. If you work for the telecommunications company that provides the service lines to Harris, find some way to disrupt them. Shut them off when they forget to pay their bill. Immediately. Just cancel their service. Don't send them a warning. Don't make a phone call. Terminate them. If you're a company that deals with Harris and they owe you money and they haven't paid you, file a lawsuit immediately once they're 30 days beyond. That's it. Go after them in any way, shape, and form you can. Do we need, perhaps, and if there's an attorney out there, let's talk about whether or not we ought to have a class action lawsuit by the American civilian population. A Fourth Amendment action, civil action against Harris. Break them financially. Put them out of business. They're not the only one, by the way, but they're one of many, 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 many. But the point is, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I was very frustrated about this police state we're living in. And I said, what's your plan to solve the problem? I'm asking you again. What can you do to end the tyranny no matter what? I watched a movie not so long ago. It was on Netflix. You know what? Let me touch on this. It was called Flame and Citron. Citron. Flame and Citron. And it was about these two guys that were partisans in Denmark during World War II. And I will talk further about that and what they did to take their country back and fight against the evil that had overtaken their nation. We need to have the same mindset. I'm not saying that we need to find a newspaper man who, is writing positive stories about Obamacare and shoot him in the street, that's what they did. When they found a traitor in their midst, they dealt with him. But we're not in an open shooting war, at least not yet. And there are peaceful legal methods that we can take that are within the boundaries of law that we can do to terminate these companies that are selling us out for a couple of small quarterly profits, folks. And I've had enough. Haven't you? Our third topic, Indiana eliminates Common Core. Or really, not so fast. The story that's out right now, and everybody's celebrating that Indiana has killed Common Core. But the truth is, what they've actually done is changed the nature of the game. All they've done is replaced it with a Common Core replicant with a new name. So don't get your panties in a wad yet, because the truth is, I don't think Indiana's eliminated Common Core. And this is not the model that we want to follow across the other 57. Oh, I'm sorry. I've been listening to President Obama. The other 50 states in the country. All right, our fourth topic. The Obamacare extension is a confession to their lawlessness. And worse yet, all of the people that have been getting subsidies through the federal system, they're illegal. It says so right in the law. According to the Democrat, liberal, progressive pukes in the planet, the law of the land. Well, if it's the law of the land, then how do you get away with unilaterally changing it unless you're a banana republic, illegal alien dictator? Oh, I'm sorry. That's what we have. Golly gee, I forgot. Forgive me. But the truth is, the law very clearly states that you can only obtain insurance subsidies through, quote, exchanges established by the state. Now, as much as Obama would like to have this be one big state that he's totally in control of and just regional managers in the 50 regions, we're not there yet. And so every individual who's received a subsidy through Obamacare, through the federal site, and nobody's gotten it through the state sites because, well, none of them work. All right, let's get into our first topic. The EPA is a domestic terrorist. And I mean that seriously. And you know what? I want you guys to start using the right phraseology, the right nomenclature, and I want you to start using language like that, that's inciting. I want you to use language like that stop with the PC nonsense. Call these traitors what they are. Tell your friends that the EPA is a domestic terror organization. Start calling it that. That's exactly what they are, folks. They have just come out with a new ruling that they want to now seize control of all public and private waterways, including temporary wetlands and waterways. Now, this is the largest governmental land grab in history. And they proposed this change on Tuesday, so yesterday. And, of course, it's sparking concerns with, lots of individuals who watch the EPA. Not that they have any insight into these people because they're surrounded by an opaque wall of protection. But it would extend into seasonal ponds, streams, and ditches, including those that are on private property and including those that are dry or wet weather creeks. Dry during the normal times, but only get water when it rains. On private property. Hey guys, that includes the trickle that runs through your backyard that drains off the guy's backyard behind you. The small stream that only gets water during a torrential rainstorm would now belong to the EPA. And it doesn't matter that it's on your land. Louisiana Senator David Vitter says, this rule may be one of the most significant private property grabs in U.S. history. The EPA proposal would apply pollution regulations to the country's so-called, quote, intermittent and ephemeral streams and wetlands, which are created only during wet seasons or simply after it rains, but are temporary. Okay, guys, what part of now? First they're in their new rules, they're shaping up to take control of all water that has a nexus to navigable water, so that they can expand the Clean Water Act to incorporate everything that they've been blocked from having access to or jurisdiction over. In other words, the original Clean Water Act says that they only have jurisdiction over navigable water. So how do they get around that? Well, in typical government duplicitous fashion, here's how they do it. They redefine it to say anything that has a nexus, that has in some way, shape, or form even the most ephemeral connection to that navigable water affects it. And so therefore, we have control over that too. That means every flood zone in the country. That means every 500-year flood zone, every 1,000-year flood zone. That means the White River Basin, which is the entire northern half of Arkansas, will fall up underneath EPA control. Private property, public property makes no difference. You kidding me, right? No, I'm not. Now they're saying, and by the way, that rule change, the way they wrote it up, was originally not supposed to include, dry creeks and so forth and so on. Now they've even wrapped that up underneath there. The Supreme Court ruled on the issue in 2001 and 2006. And again, I remind you that Jefferson told us that the Supreme Court is not the final arbiter of the Constitution, nor are they the final arbiter of rules. Any rule that exceeds the government's authority as given to it in the Constitution is null and void on its face. Anyway, the second ruling restricted the federal government's authority by stating that such waters must be, quote, relatively permanent or continuously flowing and sizable, like oceans, rivers, streams, and lakes. In defending the proposed change, the EPA and their lackey, the Army Corps of Engineers, said on Tuesday that determining the Clean Water Act protection for streams and wetlands became confusing and complex. No, it didn't. It's not confusing and complex. It's only confusing and complex when you're trying to baffle us with BS. Quote, for nearly a decade, members of Congress, state and local officials, industry, agriculture, environmental groups, and public asked for a rulemaking to provide clarity. We didn't ask for anything. Nobody wants clarity out of you. In fact, the only thing we want out of the EPA is their demise, their removal, and anyone who's associated with them removed from their position and labeled, what? Dishonorably discharged for treason against the United States of America. They argue that waters, quote, form the foundation of the nation's water resource, and the changes would not extend the government's reach. Oh, come on. Quote, to be clear, our proposal does not add or expand the scope of the waters historically protected under the Clean Water Act. That's a lie. EPA says 60% of stream miles in the country only flow seasonally. Oh, so they're going to grab an extra 60% of brand new stream mileage or after rain, but that they have a considerable impact on downstream waters. There you go. There's their justification. The impact, the nexus with downstream waters states that they now have the opportunity to step in and seize under their dictatorial control 60% of all the stream miles in the United States and the surrounding area, including the buffer zones around them that they're sure to have. The proposal is subject to a 90-day comment period in which federal officials vow to conduct a robust public outreach effort that will include discussions across the country to gather the input needed to shape a final rule. The agency said the proposed change is supported by the latest peer-reviewed science. That's a lie. They won't show us the science. They keep saying that it's backed up by peer-reviewed science. There is no empirical evidence to back it up. It is all lies, and they have refused steadfastly to produce the alleged science. I got to tell you, since Congress won't do this, folks, look, what you got to realize is this, and this is what it's going to come down to. You know, you're going to have to start learning how to become partisans. I don't know how else to say it. You're going to learn how to fight a guerrilla war against our own government. That's what it's going to come to. And it's already there. Time has passed for you to think about it. It's already here. You need to learn and educate yourself about how to fight a guerrilla war against your own government. What context does that take? All right. Let's understand what this is. It is to do anything and everything that you can do to get a broomstick into the spokes of government. Stall it any way you can. File a lawsuit. It makes no difference even if you win. Drag them down in court. Get 1,000 lawsuits filed. Pay the doggone filing fee. $18 in your county. $500 federally. Talk about an outrageous abuse of the court system. It's $500 to file a federal lawsuit. You believe it? But whether or not you win, lose, or draw, make their attorneys dance. Do everything in your power. Pass local resolutions countywide. Get state resolutions. Get your county commissioners to go to war against these people. Get them to pass state resolutions, county resolutions that say the EPA cannot come in here without contacting us first. And then make them hold to the letter of the law. Put draconian measures in there that they have to provide and produce an impact statement for everything they do. Drag them to their knees with paperwork, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they're doing to us. A guerrilla war against a terrorist organization would be applauded. Now, look back at our founders. What did they do? When the British came to them and said, you're going to pay a tax on this tea, they jumped over to the ship, they swam over to the ship, and they threw and dumped the tea overboard. It was civil disobedience. It was an act of civilian revolt. What can you do to gum up the works? What can you do to drag this entire implacable monster to a screeching halt? I'm asking you to put some serious thought to it. But I want you to keep your mouth shut, and I want you to seriously consider what it is that you can do. Don't telegraph your ideas to other people, because you'll find someone that will stand in the way and say, don't file that lawsuit. Go ahead and file it. Go ahead and do what you got to do to drag this beast to its knees. You know, Gulliver was defeated and knocked down to the ground not by one Lilliputian, but by 10 million Lilliputians that simply merely dragged him to the ground. And they tied him up not with ropes, but with thread. But with enough thread, even Gulliver couldn't move. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. Contact me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. For the purposes of the NSA, I'm not advocating anything illegal. I'm just telling Americans to do everything within their legal power to shove it up their butt. We'll be right back. All right. America, time for you to get serious. It's time for you to take action to take our country back. Let me start this broadcast out with the following phrase. For the powers that be. Nothing I say during this segment or any other segment or any discussion or broadcast that I make advocates anything illegal. But I do advocate that citizens around this country take it upon themselves to stop waiting for organization, which ain't going to happen, and do everything and anything within your power to lock this thing down. Be a Lilliputian, but be a Lilliputian with prejudice. What does that mean? It means that you do anything and everything within your power, legally, to gum up the works. That means you file a lawsuit. It doesn't take much. You don't even have to. It doesn't even have to really be a good lawsuit. It just has to be one that makes them respond. You understand? In other words, they've got teams of attorneys. That's all they do. Well, let's make them work. File lawsuits on everything. The filing fees, consider that your contribution to the preservation and restoration of America. File a lawsuit on everything you can. File them state, file them local, file them in your county superior court, file them in your federal courts. Get an attorney in your area who's willing to file them if necessary on your behalf, although you don't need one. You can file pro se. So let's use the courts to drown them in paperwork. Let's make them move paperwork by the tractor trailer load. Let's make sure that we get courts to place injunctions on them. Let's get our county commissioners to pass resolutions that says you may not violate our land use plan. What is a land use plan? Well, every county has one. And if they don't, go to your county commissioner and demand that one be immediately drawn up. I don't care how outline it is, how lean and thin it may be. Get a county use plan together and work with your county commissioners to make sure that they understand that the whole purpose of this, if they don't already have one, is that you are going to gum up the works of the EPA, which is trying to steal their authority anyway. So they ought to be happy to help you. If you got a traitor in your midst, remove them. It's that simple. Get them out. Recall them if you can. If you can't recall them, you got a 2014 election coming up. Get them out. Put them on notice right up front. You're either for us or you're against us. And if you're against us, we have no problem removing you from the equation. Dishonorably discharge him or her and move on to the next step. Get county commissioners who will sign and create a county land use plan. This idea of a land use plan can be extraordinarily powerful in the right hands, and most people don't realize what it is or how it's used. But the idea of a land use plan enables your county to say that you have to provide us with an environmental impact statement if you intend on implementing such and such a rule here. Good. Make the EPA produce the science. Make them produce the environmental impact statement. Make them produce the economic impact statement. Now you got tools you can go to court with. File a court suit anyway. Just gum it up. Is that a frivolous lawsuit? No. Make it legitimate. Work with an attorney. Find some attorney who's willing to put a little bit of time and skin and elbow grease into the preservation of our nation so he's not one of the first ones hung when they decide to march on the United States of America and lock down who? All the lawyers and the teachers and the educators, because those are usually the first to go. So remind him of that. And then say, look, I'll file the darn thing. I just need you to give me the forms or give me a sample. And file. File. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Bury these scumbags in paper. And don't wait another minute. All right. Let's get on to StingRay, your next target of opportunity. And every other corporation that's betraying you. StingRay is created by Harris Corporation. This StingRay is the device that your county government, your local police department, your city police department, your sheriff's office, they're obtaining surreptitiously because Harris Corporation makes them sign a non-disclosure agreement, whether or not they even have one. And then they put it up on a cell tower, and it pretends to be a tower that belongs to AT&T or Verizon or Sprint or whatever carrier you use. It's capturing all of your data. It's capturing all of your contact lists. It's capturing all of your texting. It's getting a hold of all of your cell phone records. It's a violation of your Fourth Amendment. First and foremost, if you find one, tear it down. Remove it physically. Secondarily, file lawsuits county by county by county. We got 3,200 counties in the United States. Get your county commissioners to file a lawsuit. Oh, they won't because they're chicken because they're elected. All right, then bypass them. My point is this, ladies and gentlemen. It's either get creative and you do this peacefully now in a legal fashion, or it won't be long before we're going to be doing this as partisans and outlaws. What are your choices? You can do this legally now, and you can use every tool and means at your disposal. Don't allow the naysayers to say, well, that lawsuit's not going to work. I don't even care if it works. I just want them buried in papers. I want them to have to move paperwork, not with a tractor trailer. I want enough paper flowing to have to bury the Brazilian rainforests, bury them in paper. Make them do their work. Ladies and gentlemen, you've got to get with the program here, because the alternative here is to just allow this thing to descend to the point where we're in a shooting war with our own government. Every step they make, every move they make, every breath they take is designed for one thing: your enslavement, their growing power, which isn't growing now in cell by cell. Look at the growth of the federal government in the last 15 years. Look back 30 years. It has grown not exponentially. It has grown by orders of magnitude exponentially. It now controls everything down to what you wipe your rear end with, all the way up to what can you do in your car? Where can you go? How do you travel? What can they do to make you uncomfortable while you travel? I read the thing the other day about the TSA and how they're going back in and they're looking at did you pay your county taxes? And if you owe a bill because you stiffed a credit card company, they're turning around and saying, here's this guy's information. They're acting like mercenaries on behalf of private corporations. Is that government's role? Harris Corporation has developed, designed, created, and is now dispensing StingRays all over the United States of America. The heck with the NSA. This is your local sheriff, your local police department that is betraying you. Where's their Fourth Amendment violation stamp of approval? They can't say it's for national security. We're trying to protect you from towel-headed terrorists. Their argument, the best argument they can put forth is crime. And your Fourth Amendment is not obliterated because of their fear of crime, which I might remind you has been dropping precipitously for decades now. And not because of all the electronic surveillance, I might add. So, what do? Well, Harris Corporation, if you drive a truck and you pick up and drop off deliveries from Harris, don't let another one get right. If you're a dispatcher, send the one that's supposed to be going to Kentucky all the way out to Wyoming. It's a harmless paperwork error. I don't know. I guess I was just sleepy that morning. Are you starting to get the picture here? If you work for the phone company, disconnect their service when they're late. It's a harmless mistake. I mean, I thought it said 300, not 30 days. I'm sorry. Look, folks, it's legal. Not doing anything wrong. What you are doing is you're taking an opportunity to fight back against tyranny and abuse. You're fighting back as a partisan now while we can do so peacefully. This is civil disobedience. Make no mistake about it. Boycotting companies that are actively seeking to betray you and injure you and your family is not only logical, it's demanded of you. It's a duty. What do you think our founding fathers would say if you said to them, what do we do about all these corporations that sell the government the technology that they use to tyrannize us? What do you think they'd say? They'd say, well, didn't you read in your history book about this thing we called the Tea Party when we went and climbed on a ship and we took all the tea and we threw it overboard? Didn't you hear about the time that we went and we ransacked the powder stores of the British? This was all before the first shot was fired. People, here's the deal. You have to be creative and you have to be intelligent. You've been given a gift of intelligence, a gift of critical thought, a gift of the ability to think around corners. That's something the animal world can't do. So I'm asking you, what are you doing with that wonderful gift that you have? Are you using it for something other than moving your thumbs around to play a video game? Are you using it for something other than to mindlessly watch a box for morons? Meant, designed, and intended to make you a moron. What are you using that gift of brilliance for? Well, why don't you get creative and become a partisan and fight back against the tyranny that is all around us? I don't know why you wouldn't do so. It's the only thing for you to do. How can you go after Harris Corporation? Well, they're a monster company. Do you work for UPS or FedEx? Can you redirect the box somewhere? You know, doesn't mean you have to eliminate it. Just send it off to Muskogee, Illinois or something. I mean, you know, put it in the wrong bin. Let it get on the wrong truck. You work for the company that does their payroll. Help them make a couple of mistakes. Just clerical errors. Do you work for a law firm that works with them? Okay. Become a whistleblower and surreptitiously expose and leak some of their secrets. Do you work directly for Harris Corporation or any of their subsidiaries that are involved with this? StingRay? Okay. Look, do you work for a police department that has a StingRay and you've been as concerned as we are about its use? Well, why don't you come out and make a press announcement? Why don't you contact me, Mike, at americasvoicenow.org, and just send me a quick email. Give me a phone call. We'll communicate if necessary on a burner or something. And, I mean, whatever it takes so that you can expose what's going on in your own department, your own sheriff's office, your own county governments. Do you work for a cell phone carrier where they're mounting these on your towers? Do you work for the tower company where they're mounting these? Are you the guy who does the repairs for the police and sheriff's department, and you know what vehicles they're using to utilize these things surreptitiously around the community? Are you the radio technician that takes care of them? You see, you got to start thinking, people, outside the box. The truth is, if you put a few minutes of thought to it, you could probably figure out a host of ways in which you can, make some significant inroads into bottling up the works. File a few lawsuits file it as a class action suit. File it as a non-class action suit. File a lawsuit against Harris Corporation for their participation in the violation of your Fourth Amendment. How about 1,000 of those simultaneously filed? Harris Corporation would be like, hey, legal counsel, what the heck is going on here? They got to answer them all. All of them. Legal counsel will be like, hey, we don't have enough lawyers on staff to handle all this. All right, well, you better outsource that law firm over at Smith or Dewey, Cheatham and Howe. So they pick up the phone and they call Dewey, Cheatham and Howe and they say, hey, we need 800 little minions to come over here and file briefs. Dewey, Cheatham and Howe says, that's great. That'll be $680,000, please. Hey, you just accomplished the task. Look, they beat us to death by attrition every day. Why not use it back? Why not accomplish the same thing, the same way, the same methodology? These cops who are using this StingRay, it's unconstitutional. If you're a member of city council in your city, if you are someone who works for city government or county government and you don't know if they're using these, you have an obligation on our behalf to find out if they are. And if they are, then you have an obligation to expose it to the public. You're not subject to the non-disclosure. The police chief may be, the sheriff may be, and if you ask them if they've got one and they lie to you because they're under non-disclosure, then you should be starting a campaign to remove them from office. It's up to you, people, to get creative about how you're going to do this. But I got to tell you, there aren't a whole lot of options left to us. We can do this peacefully. We can do this legally. We can do this in a civil disobedient manner. Or we can wait for another, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, until we're in a shooting war with our own government. That's what it's coming to. So stop pretending that it's not. It just galls me that people will sit there and say, there's still a solution here. There are no peaceful solutions. There are no solutions that you can get with a ballot box. Don't you get that? The only question is, when will it happen? Not if it will happen. That's the truth. And I think it's time Americans stopped, trying to pretend. You got to face the reality, people. This is an open declaration of war. What Obama's doing to us with Obamacare, what the EPA is doing, the ATF, what these law enforcement agencies that are murdering our citizens and our fellow countrymen, it's war. It's undeclared, but it doesn't mean that people aren't dying, that they're not losing their homes and their businesses, that their children are not losing their fathers and their mothers, that people aren't going to prison, that they're not being penalized and fined. It's a war. Start treating it as such. You can wait until it's declared before you go out and do the outlawry, okay? I mean, for criminy's sake, what more do you need to know? There are so many legal ways that you as an individual can take active action to gum up the works. I mean, when you see your own county and they're going to try to do some kind of a red light camera thing, muck it up. muck up the works. Anyway, every way, stick rubber bands in the blender, go out there and pour, proverbial sugar in the tanks. I don't mean literally. I mean your object is to figure out what you can do to drag the beast to a halt. And you and 5 million other Lilliputians will find that it won't be long before Gulliver will be implacably tied down to the ground. Will there be retaliation? You betcha. Should you do something illegal? No, because that will invite retaliation on a level which you'll be sorry for. And I'm all for taking a hit for the team, but not at the cost of losing team members. We don't sacrifice ourselves just for the sake of saying we did. I'm not advocating that you do anything illegal here. I'm telling you, though, to push it to the sharp edge of illegality. Do anything and everything within your power. Make all the mistakes you can. Harris Corporation is only one of them. There are thousands of corporations. The companies, the automobile companies that sell these vehicles to these people. If the utility that supplies your local police departments. I mean, think about it, folks. They cannot exist. Think about it this way. One of the things that has been talked about quite heavily about the NSA facility in Utah is for the neighboring states, including Utah, by the way, to shut off the water and electricity supply to them because they're violating the Fourth Amendment. And these states say, you know what, you want to play hardball? We can't get you federally, so here's what we're going to do. We're just going to shut off the power, and we're going to shut off the water. And then you and your fancy, $300 billion hard drive, not going to work. I mean, unless you put up a solar panel the size of Georgia, you're not going anywhere with that. So have a nice day. Bye. Do the same thing. If you're a company that supplies any of these companies, do the same thing. Let me tell you about... we got 2 minutes left. Dagnabbit. All right, I'm going to tell you in the next segment. Our next segment is Indiana eliminates Common Core? ? Not so fast. This is another one. Another opportunity for you to put the broomstick in the spokes. Common Core. Your school system, your school board, your high school, your community, your middle school, elementary school. Bring them to a screeching halt. You know what? You're the parents. All right, we're going to talk about Common Core in a minute. You're listening to America's Voice Now. If you want to communicate with me directly, my name is Michael Evans. You can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's americasvoicenow.org. mike@americasvoicenow.org. Send me an email. Send me an email with your idea. Perhaps you shouldn't send me an email with your idea. The NSA will be watching that, and then you'll telegraph your punch. So just do it. Don't tell me about it. In fact, don't tell anybody about it. Just go do it. You're the shipping clerk, and, I'm sitting here, and that bill of lading comes up, and I see it's going to Harris Corporation, and I don't know, I mistakenly light a cigarette with it or something. 60 days later, the box is still sitting there. Hello. You didn't do anything illegal. You just lit a cigarette. I mean, All right, we're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to talk about Indiana says they eliminated Common Core. Not so fast. Hang on a minute. They haven't eliminated anything. They just renamed it. You can call the devil something else. It doesn't change his stripes.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. We're in the third out of 4 segments this morning. And we're covering some ground on some areas that every American should be passing around and sharing these videos and ideas with others in your circle of influence. The object of today's discussion is to become a civil disruptor. Legally, don't do anything that would violate the law. Don't do anything that would be construed to be, illegal. But do anything and everything in your power to broomstick the spokes of federal, state, and local governments. Bog them down in paperwork. So far, we talked about the EPA and how it's become a domestic terrorist that's cloaked as a federal agency. Ladies and gentlemen, they are a domestic terrorist. I'm telling you right now that the EPA, and there are many other agencies among them, by the way, but the EPA is particularly egregious because they carry such enormous weight and power that, it's the elephant versus the mouse theory, right? Or the elephant versus the fly. They can crush you, but I got to tell you, there are ways that you can get around them. There are ways that you can slow them down. You can file lawsuits against them. Just make them answer. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. You're not really trying to win. You're just going to pay your $18 filing fee or your $500 filing fee. Take a collection up. Go to your local church and say, you know what? Instead of, giving to this fund for the something or other this week, we're going to take a collection up that's going to allow us to file a lawsuit in federal government against the EPA. We don't expect to win. We just expect to bury them in paperwork and have them bury us in paperwork. Of course, we'll save it all so that when coal is eliminated from our economy, we can use it for firewood to heat the church. But you get the point. You see, the point is not whether or not you win. The point is to harass them to death. You don't die from a bee sting. But if you're stung by 1,000 bees, you go into anaphylactic shock. You don't die from a fire ant bite. But if 5,000 fire ants bite you, you're a dead man. So I'm asking you, are you being creative? Are you being thoughtful? Harris Corporation. In our second segment, we talked about them and the StingRay that they put up that replaces a cell tower, and you are, without your knowledge or permission, all of your personal information, including your contact records and all of the lists that are in your phones, all of their text messages, all your voice calls, it's all being captured by local county and city police departments and sheriff's departments under the guise of fighting crime. Hey, let me tell you something. You know some of the people in your county sheriff's department and some of your local city police. You trust them with personal information? Really? So, how do we stop that? Well, if you have any connection to Harris Corporation in any way, shape, or form, muck up the works. Make sure that the bill of lading gets put on the bottom of the pile time and time and time again. Make sure that the box that was supposed to go to Milwaukee ends up in Miami. If you work for a utility operation that is near or connected in any way, shape, or form to Harris Corporation, do what you can. If they forget to pay their bill, if they're 1 minute late, shut them off. Hey, it was just a mistake. I'm not suggesting you do anything illegal. So for the record, and for the NSA and the FCC who are all listening, I'm not advocating any illegal activity here, nor am I condoning or suggesting it. What I am saying is that we as partisan Americans, partisan patriots, have an opportunity to, right now, drag Gulliver to its knees, Lilliputian style, David and Goliath style, the mouse and the elephant style. And it's going to take every one of us to attack on multiple fronts. But when you get 5,000 Lilliputians who all throw a piece of thread around Gulliver, suddenly the giant can't move. Indiana, they eliminated Common Core. That's the story all over the place. Indiana passes a Common Core elimination program. Yay! Not so fast. The woman who refused to sign off on Common Core as the federal standard, her name is Sandra Stotsky, Dr. Sandra Stotsky, she refused to sign off on the national standards while she was reviewing Common Core under the validation group. By the way, they hired 2 actual educators, only 2, to review the documentation that they created for Common Core, and both of them refused to sign off on it. Anyway, she was hired by Indiana to review the state's new proposed state standards that are going to replace Common Core. You know what she says? It's a grand deception. Hello. It's a grand deception. Her words, not mine. Now, she ought to know. And what she's saying is this. Basically, they've taken Common Core and they've said, the name Common Core is a poison pill, so let's eliminate it. And what we're going to do in its place is we're going to basically take the same crap we were shoving down the throats of our kids under Common Core. We're going to call it something different, and we're going to relabel it and submit it and get it through. And everybody cheered. And the crowd roars. But it's all a grand deception. She explains that the draft standards proposed as a replacement for Common Core in Indiana, in fact, are almost the same exact standards as the national scheme that started the whole thing in the first place. Incredibly, internal government documents actually reveal that as much as 90% of the new standards that are intended for grades 6 through 12 were taken directly from Common Core. Another 20% of the standards were edited versions of Common Core. So all they did is change a word or two. And so basically 90% of the entire project is Common Core all over again. About half of the new standards from kindergarten through 5th grade were lifted from Common Core. It makes a fool of the governor, says Ms. Stotsky, Dr. Stotsky. She is the premier national expert on Common Core, and she was quoted as saying this by Fox News about Indiana's allegedly new standards. Quote, the governor is being embarrassed by his own Department of Education if the final version is too close to Common Core. Based on the legislation rejecting Common Core, the Indiana Board of Education is set to vote on the proposed new standards in late April. It is not immediately clear whether or not they would be approved, and opposition is building as the public slowly realizes they've again been taken for a ride. So, let's get back to the premise of today's show. How do you muck up the works? Okay, here we go. Go to your school board members and say to them, we're watching you, and if you approve Common Core, we're going to remove you at the next possible election. End of argument, end of discussion. Go to their house and knock their garbage cans over for all I care. Sick a raccoon on their cans. I mean, here's your point. You are to do anything and everything within your power that is legal and lawful anywhere and everywhere to anyone and any group, any organization, any entity, any government organization or group. That's it. Go after them all. Go after the private corporations. Go after the companies that want to ship the books. If you work for UPS and you know that's a group of textbooks coming in and it's full of Common Core, make it go to Alaska. Sideswipe it. Make it disappear. If you work for the school and you see the Common Core standards coming in, do everything in your power to end it. Everything. Everything. Do it legally. Don't do anything that would get you arrested. Don't do anything that would make you lose your job. You're too valuable where you are as an insider in the partisan war against tyranny and domestic terror sponsored by the state and the federal state. It's all the same thing, after all. I mean, ideally, don't you see the goal is one state anyway, with 50 distinct regional managers. Don't you get it? So what is your job? Your job is to figure out any way and every way. File lawsuits in your county. Get a county resolution with your county commissioners together that says Common Core cannot be instituted here. Let the school board take your county commissioners to court. It's going to take them 2 years to get it through the court system. Let them file a suit. Who cares? Who cares? The object is to gum the whole works up. Disrupt school board meetings. Show up when they say this is a closed school board meeting. 80 parents should be there and say there is no such thing as a closed board meeting. We're the owners of the school system. We're the ones who pay the taxes. They're our children. You here are managers. You work for us. And if they will not play ball, dishonorably discharge them. Did you hear what I said? Dishonorable discharge. Put that bumper sticker on the back of their car in the parking lot. Yeah, get some bumper stickers made up that you can find any politician's car and put it right on there. Make sure you put it on there with removable stickum so that they can't accuse you of vandalism. And all it says is, I'm a politician and my constituents have dishonorably discharged me for treason. Get them made up. Put them up on their Facebook page. Put them up on their front door. Get some banners made up and stick it in their yard at night. Get a full-size banner made up so that nobody can miss it. Get some banners and put them up in public that says, School Board Member Jones wants Common Core. Our town wants him dishonorably discharged for treason. And put up 100 of them in your town. Just put them up everywhere. Let everybody see them. Put them up where everybody who goes by on a major roadway, driving to and from work or on a major highway, will see it. Expose them for what they are. Write op-eds in the newspaper. If you've got a secret on one of your board members, expose them. Oh, Bob has got a problem with drinking that he's been keeping from the community. Figure out a way to let the community know that Bob, the school board member, has a problem because he sucks down a fifth of vodka every day. You see, your job is to fight tyranny any way and every way. What does that mean? That means you get creative and you do what you got to do. I'm going to find, and I want to make sure I'm giving it to you correctly. And I know it, I have it memorized, but I got my brain wrapped around something else right now, and I don't want to misquote this one. But here's the point. Here it is. Thomas Jefferson. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. So, what does eternal hostility mean? Hello? What does eternal hostility against every form of tyranny mean? I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Well, I'll tell you what that means to me. That means to me that The school board building isn't unlocked when they show up for their meeting. You just forgot. The custodian forgot to come by and unlock the building so that they could get in. That means that you as parents show up en masse. You're not asking to be allowed into the school board meeting. You're demanding it. And if they try to stop you, you stick together, not like that crap you saw in that video where this one guy stood up in a school board meeting and tried to discuss Common Core, and the police came in and dragged him out. Frankly, every citizen in that room should have gotten up and said to that officer, you leave this room right now, or we will take you apart limb from limb. All of us collectively. You will leave here in tar and feathers. Now, exit. That's what you should have done. That's what that community should have done. And that's what you need to be prepared to do as a collective group. Not mill about like calm sheep. Not stand there when you go to a city council meeting and the chief of police is called in because somebody like me or somebody like you speaks out. And they're called in to drag us out. Every citizen should stand up and say, I don't even agree with the guy, but you ain't moving him. Not today. That's how it works, folks. That's how it works. You ain't moving him. Not today. This is our country. It's our town, our city, our county government, our federal government, our state government. The time of sitting around on our hands, whining and praying and hoping and wishing that somebody's going to come along and be a leader are done. There are no leaders. Don't you get it? Look in the Democratic ticket. Find me one person. Find me anyone on the Democrat side of the fence that you could sit there and say, that person may have a possibility of being able to be a good, legitimate candidate. Find me one person on the Republican side of the fence that you can say the same thing about. I don't care whether you're talking about president for 2016. I don't care whether you're talking about 2014. There ain't a single one of them that are worth following. Nobody that you should put your butt on the line for. Not a single one. So recognize this. There is no leadership. There are no George Washingtons. And the only way that a George Washington is ever going to show is when that George Washington, who's hidden in the bat wings, who may not even know he's a George Washington yet, when he recognizes that when I raise my head to take the lead, I'm not going to get killed immediately. Hello? You see, this is a lot simpler than everybody's given it credit for. Your job is to be a partisan. Your job is to do everything. You know, back in World War II, when the French were invaded by the Germans, when the Swedes were invaded, well, the Swedes and the Finns were invaded by Germany. When Poland was invaded, when every country, Denmark specifically is the one I'm thinking of because of this issue that I did talk to you about with Flame and Citron. If you don't have that movie, go get it. It's called Flame, F-L-A-M-E, like flame in a candle, and Citron, C-I-T-R-O-N. Rent it, borrow it, watch it on Netflix. It's foreign language. The whole thing it takes place in Denmark, so they're speaking Dutch. And it's about these two guys who are partisans. One they call Flame, and the other they call Citron. And these two guys are partisans in the fight against an invading Nazi army. And they do everything in their power to muck up the works. They cut phone lines. They go and find the guy who used to be the local newspaper man who's now, siding with the German Nazis against his own people. And they pop him right in the middle of the street. They just walk up, pop, pop, pop. They set up ambushes on the side of the highway. They find people who are working with the Germans, and they remove them from the equation. Now, am I suggesting that you should do that? Absolutely not. That's murder. There will be a time when it won't be considered murder. It will be considered doing your part as a partisan for your nation. I am telling you that right now. No, the NSA can't hang me out to dry for that. I mean, they probably try to get me kicked off the air for saying it, but it's the truth. Right now, we're not in a shooting hot war. We're in a cold war. But we're in a cold war that they're playing for keeps. And we're standing here with our pockets exposed, pulled inside out, and no idea what to do. No organization, no coordination, no resources, nothing. And what are they doing? Well, they're actively plotting our demise. So what does a partisan do? Well, what a partisan does is anything and everything to mess it up. The lady who worked in the bakery that served the croissants that went to the hotel where the Germans ate, right? She's the one who, put a little poison in the croissants to make everybody sick. The point is simply this. Everybody can play a role, no matter how small you think it may be. Right now, we're limited to legal methods. What are those legal methods? Well, you can file lawsuits. You can file and create and organize protests. You can get up in front of your church and say, you know what? I haven't seen any of you at a school board meeting, and you all have kids in this school. So you live in this community. What's up with you? There's a school board meeting on Tuesday night. I'm not asking for you to show. I'm telling you, any one of you who will not show, just to lend support to those of us that will speak, should be ashamed of yourself. Because you say you're a parent, you say you'd love your kid, you say you'd do anything to save them, but you won't. Shame them if necessary. You don't have the brass to do it? Get me to come to your church. I'll do it for you. I have no fear. I don't care. They can kick me out. They can hate me. They can say, that guy, he should have never been allowed to come into our church. Well, guess what? Couldn't care less. I'm not PC about it. I'll call it just the way I see it. But I'm here to tell you, America, time's up. The days of sitting around trying to figure out what to do are over. Have you signed up for Obamacare yet? Good. Don't drag it out. Do not sign up for it. They just extended it. We're going to talk about that next. They just extended it. So you don't have to sign up. Kill the thing by attrition. Make it so expensive. And listen, at this point, it doesn't really matter anyway. We're so broke, it's only a function of time until the economy collapses anyhow. So we may as well speed the process. Don't sign. Don't pay the fine. Have a nice day. Don't join Obamacare. There's your first act of civil disobedience. Man, I wish I wasn't on the radio and I could say what I had to say. All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, that's what we're going to talk about. The Obamacare extension is a confession of lawlessness. And worse yet, every subsidy that's been given to anyone who signed up on the federal website is illegal. Yup, illegal. We'll be right back. Last stretch here, guys. Today would be hump day. Hey, Mikey. Hey, Mikey. What day is it? I love that commercial. That camel kills me. That was, whoever came up with that commercial, that was absolutely brilliant. Even if you don't like it, I'm telling you, that was a stroke of genius. So, what can you do to have a stroke of genius that will give a stroke to your enemy? What does a stroke do? It freezes up everything. And the object of all of this is to freeze it up, to lock it down, to do your part. There are passive ways in which you can be a partisan. And I got to tell you, I hear people label themselves all the time, right? And I hate the term conservative. I don't like to say I'm a conservative because it puts me in the same category as Republicans. No, you get the idea. It puts me in the same category with them. And I am anything but a Republican. They are dirty, conniving, carpet-bagging, mudslinging, throat-cutting, strangling thieves in high-dollar suits. That's all they are. They don't care about you. They don't care about the country. All they care about is that their party gains power. That's the truth. The Republicans and the Democrats are no different. Their goals are the same. Your enslavement, they win. They don't care what the price is. They don't care if they drag the country into the depths of misery to accomplish it either. So, don't call yourself a conservative because people construe or conflate conservatism with Republican. Call yourself a partisan and see what kind of response you get to that. I've said to people before, don't call yourself a conservative, call yourself a patriot. And the concern from people is that they say, wow, that term is too overused. Okay, call yourself a partisan. When somebody says to you, what's your political belief or your political, who do you vote for? You say, I don't vote for the Republicans and I don't vote for Democrats. I only vote for and I'm only friends with partisans. Wow. What does that mean? Boom! Door just got slammed wide open, big enough for you to drive a tractor trailer through to explain exactly what you mean. And what exactly is it that you do mean? Well, when you're a partisan, you do anything and everything in your power to drag what? Gulliver to his knees. To drag Goliath down and beat him with a pebble. What does it mean to be a partisan? It means any time and every time you get an opportunity to, you do damage to the system, all within the boundaries of legality. I'm not suggesting you do anything illegal. FCC, NSA, FBI, ATF, all you guys out there, I'm not condoning any illegal activity. I've given that disclaimer already. I'm not condoning any activity that would be construed as being illegal or immoral or unethical. What I am saying is, you are in a war, and whether or not you admit it, you're a soldier. So that means start soldiering up. And that means doing anything and everything in your power to drag this thing to its knees. Drag it to a halt. You can do it by civil disobedient means. But there's a lot of active ways that you can do it too. Again, you can, and I hate to keep throwing this back there, but you have no idea how valuable it is when you file lawsuits. It's not that you're going to win. It's just that you bury them under a snow mountain of paperwork. Don't you get it? Thousands of lawsuits means thousands of people have to respond. They have to draft a response that says why you're wrong. That's the argument they have to give back to the court. Then the court can dismiss it. But in the meantime, man, somebody's got to sit down and write a 12-page brief. Hello? Thousands of lawsuits. Millions of lawsuits. Don't sign up for Obamacare. It's a passive method, but it drags Obamacare and puts it in its proper place. Bankrupt. Death spiral. And you have two choices. You can either opt for the death spiral for Obamacare now, financial death spiral, or you can wait a little while, and then it will become your death spiral when we have national health care. And it takes you 8 weeks to get to see the doctor. Those are your two options. So it's either death spiral for Obamacare or death Death spiral for you and your family. I don't know. Let me think about that one. So, let's talk about Obamacare and the subsidy system. It's time for the White House to start sweating over legal challenges to Obamacare subsidies. That's from the Washington Examiner. By the way, they came out yesterday and they extended Obamacare beyond March 31st. And they did it unilaterally and without any kind of legal justification. They just said, we're going to do it because we want to make sure everybody has a chance to sign up. Okay. For the record, I just want to remind you of something. That when they first began this process, HHS, Health and Human Services, and Kathleen Sebelius and the president himself both said, quote, we have no plan to extend the open enrollment period. In fact, we don't actually have the statutory authority to extend the open enrollment period in 2014. Did you hear what I just said? Let me say it again for the record. We don't actually have the statutory authority to extend the open enrollment period into 014. What does that mean? That means that they do not have the legal authority and the permission or ability to move the date, to extend the deadline. And yesterday they did exactly that. That, ladies and gentlemen, is as good as a public confession on tape. It's like the guy standing there and saying into the camera, my name is Joe Schmo, and I robbed the bank on 4th and Main on Wednesday the 6th. And to prove that I was the guy who did it, the clerk named Betty slipped and fell on a banana peel, and I watched because I was there. And that's how you can prove I was really in the bank. Hello? Click, click, you're going to jail. But if we had a Congress, if we had a court system in this country that was worth their salt, both Sebelius and the president himself would both be arrested for treason and lying to the American people. Hello? That's it. Treason. Did you hear what I said? Treason. No, I don't say it too much. You don't say it enough. And that's the problem. That's why this country has fallen apart. Because you won't say it enough. So how can we solve the problem? Well, for starters, don't sign up for Obamacare. Secondly, apply for a federal subsidy, if you can. And don't take it when they give it to you. Just make them go through the paperwork motions. Don't take anything. Just make them dance on a string. Everything slows it all down. That's the goal. Sabotage by peaceful, civil, legal means. Okay? Like Bugs Bunny said, sabotage. Sabotage the system. Legally, peacefully, don't get into trouble, don't do anything illegal, but sabotage the system any way, every way, and every time you have an opportunity. Do everything in your power to gum up the works. Think of it this way. You have a well-oiled machine. A well-oiled machine runs like a sewing machine. Bzzz. So what do? Well, you take a little sugar and honey and you pour it in those cogs. And it goes from zzz. But for the radio, that was probably interesting sound effects. For those of you that are watching on video, it's probably not so interesting. But it just dawned on me what that must have sounded like on radio. So here's the point. Your job is to do anything and everything in your power to muck up the works. File for Obamacare, create an account, slow the thing down, just surf all day long if you can. Just click around. Do it. Look, everything is an opportunity to put the hurt on these people. They're your enemy. And, you know, you got to recognize it for what it is and who they are. You know, Sun Tzu told us in The Art of War, know your enemy. You cannot possibly fight an enemy that you don't know. Most Americans are still having a hard time saying, that is my enemy. I can now openly state that my federal government, my state government, my county government, my city government, my local police department, my local county sheriff's department are acting like my enemy. And therefore, I have to assume the task and the position that they are. Do you have a constitutional sheriff? Great. Then you can take him off the enemies list. Do you have a constitutional chief of police? Then you can take him off the list or her off the list. Do you have a group of individuals in your city council that are constitutionally minded? Do you have school board members that are constitutionally minded? How about your county commissioners? Any that are, keep them on the list. Any that aren't, remove them quickly. But you better be able to separate the wheat from the chaff and do it on a fairly short order. How do you find out? Well, you can ask them some straight-out questions, but not, what do you think of the Second Amendment? Because for crimini's sake, even Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi will profess belief in the Second Amendment. Ask them why the Second Amendment is important. And ask them, did you know that this was meant for you? See how they respond to that. Ask them what's the purpose of government. What is the purpose of government? If they cannot come back with this short, brief answer, government exists to protect the rights of the minority from the whims of the majority. And government exists to protect your right to life, liberty, property ownership, and the pursuit of happiness. If they cannot give you that answer in 2 sentences, then you don't vote for them. And you actively work to remove them. Recall, whatever it takes. Frighten them out of office. Make them resign. Got some dirt on them? Make them resign. Well, that person was a friend of mine. You know, I grew up with Bob all my life. You know, I mean, Bob's an okay guy. If Bob's a traitor, Bob's a traitor. If Sally, who, you know, you've been friendly with for many years, and you actually voted for her, but, you know, she seems to kind of have changed. But if Sally's a traitor, Sally's a traitor. If it gets down to the point where it comes down to Sally saying, fingering you or your family because you're not playing the game the way you're told, what are you going to say then? Sally, I thought you were my friend. Don't wait for that. Remove Sally from the equation so that she's not in a position to do that. Substitute people in there who are constitutional. Get these people to sign the pact. What is the pact? Political Accountability Contract and Trust. It states that if I violate my obligations, I've got an accountability group behind me, and if I violate 3 or 4 bullet points that I've pledged that I will do as a representative, in other words, not a refusal to vote for anything that does not have constitutional justification, that all my pre-signed and pre-executed letter of resignation is in there, in the folder. And all that my accountability partners have to do is vote for a majority and then submit it. And give me 48 hours to call the press and notify them that I've resigned. That's it. I've had so many people, I've had a lot of people who said, great idea. I've had a lot of people who said, that'll never work. Well, you know what? I have not heard one single person who said to me, that'll never work, who came up with another idea. I rest my case. The naysayers will be the first one to throw you and your ideas under the bus. But do they have any of their own? No. So those are the same people that say, well, listen, you know, you just got to sit here and take it for a little while. Like that inhumane monster of a woman the other day, talking about the guy whose 5-year-old was put in foster care because his wife's grandfather got busted selling weed 10 miles from their house. Well, you should just suck it up. Just suck it up! This is our country we're talking about here. I ain't sucking up nothing. Fight anywhere and everywhere. Here's one. The legal challenges to the Obamacare subsidies. It says right in the law that the only subsidies that can be issued are exchanges established, can be given through exchanges established by the state. That's what the law says. In other words, if you're going to get a subsidy, it has to be through an exchange established by the state. Well, there is only 14 states that have exchanges. So if you don't live in one of those 14 and you got a subsidy, it's illegal. Not that you did anything wrong. The government has broken the law. And they're stealing and using taxpayer money to accomplish the task. Now, there are cases right here. There's an appeals case. There's an appeals court called Halbig versus Sibelius. And it's one of several that is challenging the IRS ruling. If any of these cases succeeds, I got to tell you, dozens of state governments and the federal government are going to have an enormous amount of explaining to do, because they're giving out subsidies to every Tom, Dick, and Harry who's willing to put their name on the line. In fact, if you recall, they said, we're not even going to verify that the information you give us is accurate. We're just going to trust you and use the honor system. So if you say you made $30,000 last year, even though you made $82,000, we're not going to check. How much is that going to cost the taxpayer? How can you muck up the works by using the Obamacare system? You can get on there and create account after account after account after account after account after account after account. Create them all. Go in there and surf around like 100 different people. Is there anything illegal about that? No. They may say, you're using the same IP address. You could say, well, it's kind of an internet cafe. I let all my neighbors use my Wi-Fi. See, your job is to figure out how can you slow down the monster. And it doesn't have to be a brick wall. But, think about it this way. When you're trying to stop the forward motion, there's a lot of ways you can stop forward motion of a monster. You can put up a brick wall. That's one way. Another way that you could do it would be to simply pour some oil on the ground. Zoop, pang. Another way that you could do it would be to put a lot of marbles on the floor. Another way to do it would be to throw a whole bunch of nails and tacks down on the floor. Will it stop him? No. But it will certainly slow him down. The object, and quite frankly, enough tacks on the floor could stop him. Your job is to be a partisan. And what do partisans do? Partisans fight. Do you have to fight illegally? No. Am I recommending that you do? No. But partisans fight. Fighting is legal. Your job is to fight. Every time, everywhere, anywhere, against any entity that you perceive to be the wrong entity for America. And I trust your judgment, or you wouldn't be listening to this program. I trust your judgment. Go after them, all of them. Go after the post office. You think a $5 billion loss is big? Make it a $12 billion loss. Listen, why would I want to do that? It's only going to add to our national debt. Are you kidding me? Our national debt is so unbelievably high right now. if I said to you that, that's the equivalent of me saying to you, listen, you got a $5 million mortgage. What are you going to do with that? That's like $50,000, $70,000 a month. How are you going to pay that? You're not. That's the point. I mean, it is no different, folks. It is no different. This debt they're building up is designed to be eviscerated and eliminated at some point in time. And they're going to do it by a number of different methods. But, I mean, if you listen to that discussion I had with Jack Spirko last week, he said that they're going to do it by a revaluation of currency. I don't care how they do it. It doesn't matter. The point is, we're never going to pay it off, and they know it, which is why they don't even bother to hide the fact that they're giving Obama blank checks anymore. Even the conservatives. They know it's not going to ever get paid off. They know that there's going to be an economic collapse. They know. Did you hear what I just said? They know. In fact, they're not only knowledgeable about it, they're actively engaged in creating it. So therefore, what does it matter whether the post office loses $5 billion or $9 billion? What does it matter if the Department of Justice or the EPA has to go out and hire a bunch of new lawyers to fill out all of these briefs that have to be responded to from lawsuits from the civilian population of the planet? Go after them all. Your state is probably not in much better shape than the federal government. And, yes, you are probably more closely aligned to your state financially and fiscally than you are to the federal government. But I got to tell you, folks, government only lives because you feed it. And if you want to stop feeding it, then do everything you can to not only stop feeding it, but to steal the food away from it that it needs to thrive and survive. It's not enough for you to stop them from hunting. You have to steal their stored food, too, and let them starve to death. And then clip his toenails so that the monster can't go out and hunt. Aren't you getting this yet? Anything and everything that you can do that will slow it down, drag it to its knees, put it off. That's the game. You're a partisan. Do what partisans do. All right. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to wrap for the day. I want you to seriously contemplate it, and I would like you to take the time to sit and write down some areas that you think you could be effective. And then don't just sit around and dream about it. Act. Act on it. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. If you have an opportunity to, please visit and support and assist our sponsors. These folks are the people that keep us on the air, and I greatly would appreciate it if you would, and they would too, if you would visit and patronize their businesses. Make sure that you see our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, 417-372-2027. The Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, also on the square in West Plains at 417-257-1776. Visit the law offices of Jason Henry if you have a legal challenge and you could use some help. If you want to file a lawsuit, call Jason and ask him if he'd be willing to do it for you. Tell him you have no expectation of winning, you just want to gum up the works. 417-256-4100. In addition to that, visit our friends over at Pizza Hut. Tuesdays are reduced lunch day along with Thursday, and then Tuesday night kids eat free. And then finally, visit our friends over at Battery Station. BatteryStation.com, 417-257-7799. You need a great website? Go to airbridgeweb.com. Airbridgeweb.com. Or you can call 417-204-4064. All right, that's it for the day today. Think about it. You're a partisan. Do what partisans do.